Hey, how about The Wizard of Oz? Now, what about the Munchkins?
Yeah, how about the what?
The
Munchkins.
Munchkins.
I
What?
know
Yeah.
Munchkins.
Well, what the Munchkins do?
Well,
They're little
very
dwarfs.
tiny.
Huh?
Yes, yes.
Were they little kids or were they little men?
They were drunks.
They were little drunks?
Yeah, they were.
What they, you got me stuttering. What did they do? What did they do?
What did they do?
What the dwarfs do?
Well, one of them, who was about 40, a gentleman asked me for dinner, and I couldn't say, I don't want to go out. I can't because you're midges. And I just said, no, my mother wouldn't like it. Oh, come on, bring your ma, too, you know.
How big was he?
About 2 inches high.
What could you do with him?
I don't know.
What could he do? I mean...
Oh, I know. They haven't did a lot because...
There was a lot of them.
Oh, you know, hundreds of thousands. And they put them all in one hotel room. Not one room, one hotel in Culver City.
Yeah.
And they got smashed every night. And they pick them up in butterfly nets.
When it comes to the actors who played the Munchkins in the original Wizard of Oz film, there's been lots of rumor and speculation, innuendo, ouchuendos, over the years in regards to the behaviors of these little people on set during the filming process, and that's included rumors of intoxicated brawls and parties, predatory behavior towards Judy Garland, and infamously a death on set. But very few people actually know about the real stories and who these little people actually were in the first place outside of being Munchkins. So today I figured we would take a look at some of the rumors that have circulated these actors, where they came from in the first place, and some of the most iconic actors with dwarfism in the film, because some of them were divaing down. But hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aubrey Smalls, and this is where we talk about all things dwarfism history, especially in pop culture and media. Before we begin, please subscribe and turn the bell notifications on so you can get all of my videos directly in your inbox as soon as I post them. And also, guys, I'm moving across country. Am I scared? A little bit, but I'm so excited actually to get out of Arizona. And feel free to guess where I'm moving to in the comments down below. I'll blow you a kiss if you guess it right. I don't know how I'm going to do that over the internet, but... So surprisingly, the actors who played the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz, one, that was not their real voices. They didn't all have high-pitched voices like that. They were dubbed with average-height actors, and then the voice was sped up, so it wasn't any of the little people speaking. So when people ask me, why do all the Munchkins have high-pitched voices? Why do little people have such high-pitched voices? That wasn't accurate. So I really wanted to spend most of this video talking about the actors with dwarfism who were iconic, who played the winged monkeys and the Munchkins, but before we do, let's just do some groundkeeping, okay? No actor with dwarfism unalived themselves on set. That is just an internet rumor that has existed for over a decade at this point and has no factual basis and has been proven wrong many times before, so before you say, well, isn't it? No, we're not even gonna go there. 2. All of the claims of predatory and inappropriate behavior by these little people have been proven false. Judy Garland, even in clips like this, clearly was not in her right mind. I'm not going to be too hard on her because she went through a lot herself as a young woman in this industry at that time, so I'm not going to hold a grudge. But it's where a lot of these rumors began. There was some people who were very messed up in this production team who made this film, and they unfortunately had derogatory things to say about little people because dwarfism was considered to be like below human at this time in history, so it's not surprising that you have people talking about little people as if they were animals. 3. What we do know about these little people is that they came from all around the world. They have been cast specifically by a man named Leo Singer. He was hired by their studio to assemble a cast of 124 adults with dwarfism to play the Munchkins and some of them to play the winged monkeys. He was a horrible person. He ended up not only taking half of the paycheck that they had set aside for each little person to pocket for himself, but in the film credits, none of the actors who played the Munchkins were credited. They were simply credited as being singers, midgets. These little people have been scouted from all around the world. Overseas, within the United States, they were brought to LA to the filming studio for about 8 weeks. They worked from around 5 o'clock in the morning all the way till nighttime, rehearsing, doing makeup, doing choreography, doing music tests, learning all of their lines, and they were not credited in the film. They were simply listed as a slur. I'll go into why the M word is not an okay word in the future, but it essentially was just used to dehumanize people with dwarfism and to even justify things like child marriage. So it's just not a term that we use. Some people are like, we need to reclaim every word. We don't. It doesn't matter if some little people still find power in the word. It was a slur, and it's always going to be a slur. But these little people actually worked really hard during the process of filming this movie. Also, in the original book Wizard of Oz, the Munchkins weren't described as being people with dwarfism. They were described as being short, but like the size of a 12 to 14-year-old, which is not the size of most people with dwarfism. But at the time, freak shows were really, really popular, and a lot of freak shows had people with dwarfism living in these miniature villages where they would basically have little people from all around the world come to work in these, they call them midget villages, and they'd have like a miniature barbershop, a miniature restaurant, a miniature fire station, a miniature post office, and it would be basically like Disneyland. People would bring their families to go and walk around like it was a human zoo to stare at little people working at these fake jobs. Like they would have a fake firefighter little person and a fake, it was a really weird thing. It was literally like a dwarf theme park. So it's not even that surprising that in The Wizard of Oz, the Munchkins were depicted as like this weird cult-like commune. Nevertheless, let's actually get into some of these actors because they were way more than the roles that they played. I personally love so many of them. The first being Meinhardt, who actually was the first person to drive the Wienermobile. You guys have seen that. You know what I'm talking about, right? The giant hot dog. Oscar Mayer. Yeah, he worked for them for years as a traveling salesman before being cast in The Wizard of Oz, which he took a little sabbatical from Oscar Mayer to be in. In The Wizard of Oz, he actually played the coroner Munchkin, the one who reads the scroll and is like, she's dead, girl. She's gone. What's so fascinating about him is that he actually served in World War II in the Civil Air Patrol as a pilot, and he was so good at flying that he ended up training future pilots in the Civil Air Patrol and was like highly respected and decorated, and you just don't really hear about people with dwarfism in those types of jobs, and I find it so fascinating that he drove the Wienermobile, was a Munchkin, and also served in the war. He was from a small town in Wisconsin and had such an action-packed life. He was from a small town in Wisconsin and didn't even know that there were other little people like him until he saw some performers with dwarfism and realized that he wasn't the only one. And his life was just so action-packed that it makes me so sad that for the most part, his life was reduced to just being uncredited Munchkin. And that so many of these actors who played the Munchkins are just reduced to being these weird caricatures representing the dwarfism community, popping out of eggs and adults dressing like children, and it just is a very sad legacy sometimes. I think that we need to hopefully in the future recognize that these were people who were actors who played these roles, because I think so many times people just lump them up as Munchkins, and they're just like, oh, the Munchkin's this, the Munchkin's that, and it's like, no, those were people. They had names. Another interesting one that I love personally is, for those of you who didn't know, I grew up working in the circus, and some of the actors with dwarfism who played the Munchkins also were circus performers. So for example, Jack Gerlich was an Austrian immigrant who traveled all around as a circus performer before starring as one of the Lollipop Guild members in The Wizard of Oz. And what's interesting about his journey is that during World War II, he actually relocated to Florida, picked up everything he had, relocated to go and help with the shipbuilding efforts, because as a welder, he had a unique advantage that other welders didn't have, which is that when building ships, there was just parts of the ship that were hard to reach and access if you weren't a little person. So there was actually a bunch of people with dwarfism who were welders and were well respected for being a welder because of the fact that they could navigate tight spaces that other people couldn't. So they were very valuable and considered a crucial component of building ships and things like submarines, etc. When it comes to other movies that he was also in this Western comedy musical called The Terror of Tiny Town, which was a movie that featured all little people. It was a Western movie, they did their own stunts, and the whole point was it was supposed to be a joke, like an all-dwarf cast, but it was actually in its own way very unique. We don't really have movies like that anymore where the whole film is cast exclusively with people with dwarfism. So I mean, in that regard it was cool, but it was like marketed and created and conceived to be a joke and to be a bit like, look at all these little people in a Western movie, and it didn't do well, it didn't flop, but they were going to make a sequel potentially, never happened. But Jack was also in that, and unfortunately he did die relatively early at the age of 35. But in the time that he was alive, he did accomplish so much, and especially being in the Lollipop Guild, that's kind of one of the parts of the Munchkinland sequence that's the most recognized and the most repeated when it comes to songs. So I hope wherever he is in the universe, he knows that we know and we respect him. Lastly, I love this couple, Parnell St. Aubin and his wife Mary, because Mary actually wasn't in The Wizard of Oz. She was a contortionist and a performer with dwarfism who was working the vaudeville and theater circuit when she met Parnell. Parnell had worked in one of those dwarf theme parks as a child, as a teenager, before being in The Wizard of Oz as one of the soldiers. They ended up meeting after the filming of Wizard of Oz. They got married kind of right away. They got engaged on Valentine's Day and wed, and ended up opening a bar in Chicago that ran for it was open for like 36 years or something like that. And what was unique about it was that it was custom built for them to work in, because they wanted to work in it and hire other little people to work in it. And even though the attendants of the bar were not little people all the time, it was average type people and people of all different types of abilities, the bar and the furniture and the tables were all custom made for people with dwarfism. And it was actually a really popular bar in Chicago. It was known as like a local watering hole that lots of people attended, and it was, again, managed by Mary and Parnell and for 36 years, and I think that's so cool. Like, from Munchkin to business owner. I think that's kind of an iconic arc. When it comes down to it, playing Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz is what everyone else in the world knows them as, and what most people even attribute people with dwarfism as, you know? Like, it's a common joke that people make to little people is, oh, Munchkin this, Munchkin that. When people think of little people, they often think of Munchkins, but for these little people performers, this was like a little blip in their careers, in their lives. They were going on and fighting in wars. They were opening up their own businesses, just doing things that are never talked about. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think it really limits the perspectives of what people with dwarfism are capable of and what actors with dwarfism are capable of. They contributed so much to this movie, were never credited, were listed as a slur, for the most part forgotten. And what I find so special about these actors specifically is that they had an amazing time and relationship on set. The director of Wizard of Oz was known for being a hard ass. He also directed Gone with the Wind. But when it came to the Munchkin actors, he was actually so kind. He was just very gentle, very understanding, very cooperative. And all of the other stars in the movie, from Judy Garland to the actress who played Glinda, the Wicked Witch, were all friends with these actors with dwarfism. So much so that people like Margaret Hamilton or Billy Burke, it was either the Wicked Witch actress or Glinda. When the film wrapped, they sent each actor with dwarfism a handwritten note on like a headshot and sent it to each of these performers, because they had valued their time on set with each other so much. And you don't really hear about those like positive experiences or positive relationships on set with these little people. People like Mickey Rooney would come to visit every day to see Judy Garland and would have lunch with these actors with dwarfism. They all became friends. Mickey Rooney actually worked with some little people throughout his career because of these relationships they had built on the set behind the scenes of Wizard of Oz. There's just so much lore there. And they made a movie called Under the Rainbow, which is supposed to harp on all of those like nasty rumors about these little people. And I think it's just so unfortunate that their hard work was completely pushed aside to try to like demonize them and make them seem like they were weird freaks, when in reality they were working so hard. And for most of them, they were meeting little people for the first time. Let me know what you guys think though. Do you like The Wizard of Oz? It took everything in me not to sing Wicked this entire time, because I have wicked brain right now. But I will put some links below if you want to read more or watch more about some of these amazing actors who played the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. And that is really all that I have for you today. I appreciate you guys so much. Next time you see me, I might be in a whole new location. We shall see. Wish me luck. But until next time, my name is Aubrey Smalls. I love you so much. Keep going.